All right, gentlemen, we wanted to be live. We are not quite live because YouTube has a policy that you can only invite co-streamers to a podcast if you have 50 or more subscribers. So I've used this to encourage people to subscribe to my YouTube. I think I had 40 or 41 subscribers at this time. Um, but sadly, while we are doing a radio show, we are not doing a live radio show today. We've done much of these videos before, but I'll ask you guys to introduce yourselves again. I'm Kieran, CEO of Block Apps. Throw it over to Victor.
I'm Victor, Chief Product Officer at Block Apps.
Jim.
I am James Hormuzdiar, or Jim, CTO of Block Apps.
Right. It will be a good episode today. We'll see how we do on time. We might go short, might go long. We'll find out. Um, Definitely a DevCon recap. I did not make it to DevCon, but Victor and Jim did, and we have some good historical context to go into. Etc. With years in between DevCons. We'll have some discussion of 90s and early aughts hip hop. I believe that will be mostly a me and Victor discussion. But first, a rant. So it's been a funny week for meme coins. It's been a funny journey for meme coins. Memes seem to have really come into focus this cycle. There are something like 180, 200,000 meme coins minted per day, I think mostly via pump.fun on Solana. That is just a hard number for me to even contemplate. Like, that can't be by 180,000 different people. I imagine like there must be like meme coin manufacturers who are doing like 10 or 100 or 1,000 per day or something, and just like hoping one of them will hit, you know. But that is a staggering amount of activity. Like whole new coins, couple 100,000 a day. Very few of them are bubbling to the top. And perhaps for that reason, people are doing more and more insane things to get attention on meme coins. And this is causing backlash. We, of course, lived through the ICO era. One of the, now I realize, features of the ICO era is that, there was always like a really big technical vision, or often a really big technical vision promised. This is the blockchain that will make Internet of Things streaming data possible. This is the zero knowledge proof chain. This is, there were 50-page abstruse documents, some of them, coming from like, people call them professor chains sometimes, which I find very funny, like very legit academics. Some meant to look like they were legit academic works and weren't. Some, a big mix. Cryptography in particular seems to be a field where not all of the good work comes from academia, which is interesting. There's definitely kind of more, call it grassroots or DIY activity. You look at the Bitcoin core devs, they were sort of a bunch of cryptographers, but kind of a ragtag group of super geniuses at the outset. And a lot of the criticism of meme coins comes down to like, oh, it's just sentiment. It's just a meme. Like, what is it? Where are the cash flows? And the message I'd like to send out today is like, yes, it's just a popularity contest, but everything is just a popularity contest. Gold, it's not worth anything, really. It's inert. It's not going to disappear. You can kind of bend it into stuff. You can make things out of it. It's not worth nothing. Silver is probably better than gold. It actually has, I think it has more industrial application, but gold has 10 times the market cap. Memes are just the distilled version of sentiment. If you like it, you buy it. If you don't like it, you don't buy it. Maybe you sell it if you have it. GameStop was very funny. There's a lot of short interest from boomer hedge fund managers and idiots on the internet bid the price of GameStop up and blew up those hedge funds, which is maybe not great for society, though it is hilarious to me to this date. Bitcoin, is it a meme coin? I mean, yes and no. It's got to, like people burned energy to get the get the Bitcoin. Very revolutionary and intricate technical design. It's got principles behind it. But is it the all of that was essential and that caused the belief, which caused the price run up, or is it kind of intertwined? Bitcoin on launch was not secure enough to withstand any sort of nation state attack or serious attempts at taking the thing down. Satoshi wrote that we might have to reset this thing. That turned out never to actually happen. And so I think it's always going to be kind of a mix of both. The thing that drives the price action is belief, and that relates to the underlying fundamentals, but it's not exactly the same, though over the long run, perhaps it is. I mean, Doge is still here. Doge was explicitly meant as a joke. Kind of crossed over. It seems like a staple now. Like I'm not sure if people will lend against Doge as collateral, but I think they might. I remember when FTX was exploding. I forget one of the maybe it was crypto.com. One of the exchanges had like a lot of Doge, like a lot. It's like 20% or something. And I don't think they blew up. So in any case, democracy, popularity contest. People are just memes. Stocks, kind of just memes. There's a ticker. I like Apple products. I don't know that I mean, I also like, in part, don't like Apple. I feel like I like that they've made all the choices for me. I also don't like that they've made all the choices for me. Their revenues keep growing. But, if you got a growth stock or like something with a high P ratio or a blue chip stock, I think it's just a popular meme. It just means there's more buying interest than maybe there should be based on the fundamentals. Similarly, there's profitable stuff that people don't like Altria, very high dividend yield, given that people just kind of keep buying cigarettes, but cigarettes are bad. It's a bad meme. In any case, in a long run, you kind of see what the meme does. Most of them will just kind of go away and they're ephemeral, but some of them will stick and then become kind of like religions, perhaps. So anyway, let the people meme, I say. Pump.fun had a feature which I think it yesterday turned off, in which it had live streams. People were stripping or doing drugs, or there were people in cages at certain market cap levels. It's probably a good thing that they turned this feature off. I also don't really hold any meme coins, a very de minimis amount, but kind of think it's a little silly, but a good thing, you know. So here we are. Everything is a popularity contest. So just let them run. Vic, do you have any comments?
Well, I don't, I agree that like popularity is a big part of it, but there is some point where I don't know, like there, I think of popularity as a short-term thing. I know you don't mean it that way, but like I think at some point enough people believe that something is valuable that it becomes more of an institution or like you said, a religion than a popularity contest. I mean, we saw it happen with Ether, right? Like it went from like no one caring to like it being, the price of Ether being advertised in like stock tickers alongside stock tickers. And I'm not exactly sure how those things cross over, but I do think that there is a crossover point.
Hmm. Maybe it should be a different word, perhaps. Should I say everything is sentiment?
Yeah, I think that's right. Like the thing is like you know, I was reading this book Nexus, and it talks about how like certain things that are clearly not true are persistent. Like astrology is one. There's a whole astrology industry, right? And like it is persistent, even though it is clearly not true. There's nothing backing it. So, I do agree that it is possible things don't have to be based on fundamental bases for them to kind of generate value in the long term.
Yeah. I guess so okay, you agree also you can have like almost no relation to utility, even in the long term, somehow.
Well,
Yeah.
how
Sorry,
do
go ahead, Jim.
how do meme coins differ from basically fractionalized NFTs?
I think they're the same. I mean, the meme may not even have like an interesting like image associated with it. It's like a purposefully bad image. Although I guess I would say you definitely see more like coordinated promotion of meme coins than you do NFTs. I don't really like obviously we lived through this era, but I have like no idea why like Bored Apes went way up, for instance.
Yeah, there seems to be something where something like goes from short-term popular to more of a durable movement, and it kind of like stays, right? And like you can see this in like all kinds of organizations. Like I guess when there's sort of like organizational backing and it kind of becomes more persistent, that group. I think that's kind of when it changes over. But yeah, like sometimes um I mean, there are plenty of cases where fundamentals aren't the thing that drives the value of something. I mean, take a look, most tech companies, most of them lose money for long, long periods of time, and they still have, valuations way higher than companies that were making lots of concrete money.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Well,
think
and
there
if
has been a trend. This is not true across the board where like crypto, the marketed promise of utility is sort of like gone from like really cool cryptographic apparatus to like interesting digital images to tweets, you know. And it's bifurcating too. Obviously, we're on the RWA side, which is a sort of a return to utility. But, you know, RWA's
Well,
kind of memes too. That's what I'm saying.
I know we're going to cover this in the DevCon segment, but I do think one thing that has kind of clearly shown as valuable in crypto is like stable coins in general. So like, that's something that's proven very, very durable and increasing. And it's interesting because if you look at the numbers, it's increasing regardless of whether or not, fluctuations in the crypto prices, which is really interesting.
USD meme, gun-backed meme nonetheless.
will Bored Ape slash Doge slash any of these things have any value in 20 years?
Let me think about that. At the moment, I say Doge, yes, Bored Apes, no. But I don't
Doge seems
know
to be
why.
growing in popularity
What is it?
because of other reasons. Maybe
I
Doge
suppose. Yeah.
growing in popularity right now.
Yeah.
But it's not a high confidence bet. All right. Enough on this shortish rant for today. Um, on to DevCon. Um, before we talk about Bangkok, I'll ask you guys about the history of our DevCon attendance. What was our first DevCon?
Well, I don't know. Were you at DevCon 0? You
I
were
was
at
not
Dev.
at DevCon 0.
Okay, you were at DevCon
I
0.
think it was a
So,
weird, like totally closed thing that like very few people were invited to, I think.
right, yeah, I think it was like 10 people or 20
Yeah.
people, right? And so the first, I guess, real DevCon, which was in London, we were all there and we basically presented the first big partnership Ethereum ever had with Microsoft when we launched blockchain as a service. So, um, you know, and it was about 300 people, I think, relatively then. It was just after the launch. So, it kind of came together very, very quickly. And I think most people were surprised that there were 300 people there. And then the next year was in Shanghai. We were also presenting at that one. We were talking about, um, what we now talk about as tokenization of real world assets, but that name didn't exist yet. It was really about we were demonstrating the first, tokenization of supply chain items with BHP Billiton and stuff. And I was quoted in I think what Wall Street Journal because I said that I believed China would probably be the biggest blockchain market in the world, not knowing that they were on that trajectory, but then they, cut crypto off. Though you could say by proxy, Singapore and Hong Kong have kind of taken that on, and there would be an argument to be made that that could be part of Greater China, I guess. But since then, since that DevCon, which I think was 2017, we haven't been back to one subsequently, primarily been because we've been focused on sort of enterprise use cases and doing those kind of conferences. So I think we popped into some of the other conferences like Consensus or these other conferences.
Yeah, I feel like right. So Consensus got popular as a conference 2017, 2018, and onward, and maybe sucked a little of the energy out. DevCon also, it's like always somewhere hard to get to for us. It was like I forget, was there one in Brazil? There was like a
There's
Cancun one.
Bogota. There was,
Yeah, okay. Bogota,
yeah.
that's right. They're all over the world, which is cool. Like it's a global movement, but it was also like I mean Bangkok also. It's like a to-do. You gotta really be committed to go DevCon.
Did
Um,
we make a conscious decision not to go to three? I don't even remember. I think we were just busy and it
we were real
didn't.
busy with customers. Also, so I kind of felt like the ICO era kind of caused us to like, we're like, whoa, let that run over there. Which part of me, not that we would have done one necessarily, part of me regrets not like watching it more closely, at least. Because it was very interesting and crazy. Like we watched it, but it was like we were super busy and
Did it come up as a conversation? I can't remember if we were like sitting and thinking like,
I'm
should
sure
we go
I'm
to
sure we discussed, are you going to DevCon?
I'm
Like,
sure people asked us if we were going to DevCon,
yeah,
particularly because we had such a large presence in previous DevCons. But I think also it started to become like, when in the DevCons we went to, the DevCons themselves were 1 or 2 days affairs, and then it kind of like expanded, right? Now it's like a week, but now, with this current one, it seems to be like a whole month, right? It's like there are events the week before, there's the week of it, and then there were events,
huge?
the week after.
Well,
every event thing has like inflation of the people's birthdays. It was your birthday this week. Now it's your birthday this month. Conferences. You said like 200 side events or something? Like
I think there were about 50 side events
50 side
per
events.
day. And like the other thing is that it was just impossible. Like traffic in Bangkok reminds me of like traffic in Beijing, when I lived there, right? Like which was like 15 years ago. And it was just terrible. Like getting from one place to the other was a nightmare. So even if you wanted to go to every event, there's no way, like you'd just be stuck in, a Grab, which is their equivalent of Uber all the time, right? Like it's just impossible to get around.
Token 2049, I guess like it does show that like Singapore is very competent. There's like not a traffic issue at all, and they had like everything. So I did Token 2049, and this was the deal, and the other founders got to take DevCon. I'm not sure who was better off. I would definitely have liked to go to Bangkok too, but I'd never been to Singapore or Bangkok, and so Singapore was very cool. Uh, but yeah, not really a traffic issue. And they had Formula One the coming weekend, and they were like kept closing and rerouting roads. I guess
Yeah.
it's also because like you there's like a gigantic tax if you want to have a car in Singapore, so maybe it has fewer cars than people otherwise would. Um, but it kind of the city sort of elastically absorbed that many people, and it seemed kind of totally fine. Or it sounds like it didn't go that way in Bangkok.
Well, I mean, there's just tons of people in Bangkok. Like it's just like I think it's a very busy city, just in general. Like I
Pretty
don't think it
dense.
was the,
Let me look it
yeah,
up.
I don't think it was the conference that made it that much more busy.
Population wise, it's like New York, but boy, it feels so much more crowded than New York. I got back to New York City and I was like, oh, it's good to have some open space finally.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
hilarious. Okay,
I
well,
mean,
um,
well, go
the
ahead.
internet reports Bangkok at half the density of New York City, but maybe there was some phenomenon where you're in like the densest part, and that's denser,
Probably, yeah.
densest part.
Well, I think it's just traffic is really bad.
I see.
Like I think that's the
Yeah, even walking though. Even like our walk to the subway in the morning, I was like constantly, like navigating left and right to get around people.
Yeah, it is, I think, sort of a maybe like a growth infrastructure issue. Like the sidewalks are really tiny. Like they like fit one person and you're like always like dodging people as you're kind of walking down them. Whereas in like Beijing, for example, they're giant and like, you could drive a car down the sidewalk, but it's just meant for people basically.
Great. I Googled this. I don't know how great this article is. If you had to guess, highest population density per square mile city in the world.
Hmm. Highest density square mile. Oh,
I have a random guess, but no, probably not.
wouldn't it
I was
be
thinking like
like
Tokyo or something.
it could be
That's what I
Tokyo,
would have said.
Delhi?
Victor, yeah, generally you're on the right track.
Yeah,
The answer seems to be Manila with 120,000 people per
yeah.
square mile. Second one is also in the Philippines, Pateros. I don't know how to
Yeah.
pronounce. Interestingly, Baghdad, number four, 85,000.
Oh, interesting.
So it seems to be sort of like um, a characteristic of like moderate development kind of thing. Like for a while, it was like the Kowloon walled city in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
let me see what Tokyo is. So New York is like 10,000 per square mile, I think.
What about just Manhattan?
It's a good question. Tokyo is 6,000. Oh, no, that's per square kilometer. That's per square mile. That's, yeah. So Tokyo is denser than New York, 16,000. Let's see, Manhattan population density. Manhattan's is 73,000 per square mile. So that puts it pretty high on the list. So I guess you're seeing that like Queens, Staten Island, Brooklyn.
Yeah, Staten Island ruined it for us.
Exactly. They keep throwing us a seed. We could just let them. Yeah.
Geographically, they're basically Jersey.
Yeah. Culturally, too. I like Staten Island. Staten Island was good. Um, but yeah, so Bangkok, I guess you must have been in the densest part. I
I'm
would
sure
have
we
thought it would
would.
be very high density also.
Well, I think like, my previous experience in Bangkok was like 20 years before that. And there were still, like tuk-tuks, right? Like
Yep.
three-wheel motorcycles driving around. there weren't that many cars, and now it's just packed with cars, like, and tons of Chinese cars. Like they're
I
made
too
by
had been there
Chinese.
25 years ago and then now, and it's pretty different.
Hmm.
It's a very modern, quite nice city right now.
Yeah.
Crowded, hot, but a lot of nice infrastructure, shopping malls.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, okay, so going back to DevCon for a second, maybe in 90-second big picture impressions.
Jim,
Huge.
why don't you start?
Well, it's big. Okay, so having not gone many years, I mean, it's bad in many ways because we didn't get to like see the development over years, but having this gap here makes us sort of time travelers. Like our last memory was what 2017,
Yeah.
and it's huge right now compared to what I remember. I mean, one of the things that I noted is like when we were there last time, just like for instance Vitalik, he was just sort of hanging out with everybody and you could go up to him and talk and now it's so huge that people would all come crowding into the main hall if he came to speak, and then they would sort of shuffle him in, and there was really no way you could go up to him and just chat like you used to be able to. um, the place was so big and there were so many things going on, and you always had to choose, like, do I want to see this one or that one? And often if one ended, uh, I didn't realize this on day one, but by the last day I knew, like, this one and this one, there's no way I'm going to be able to get to because it's going to take me like 15 minutes to walk from my hall to that hall. So you had to sort of like schedule things around where you were, or find gaps where you could walk to the other side.
You know how many people attended? I know Token 2049 was again about 20,000, which was enormous, you
I
know.
think the number I read was like 12 or 16,000, like in that.
That's hefty. It's a lot of
Yeah,
people.
so it was a lot.
it's a lot. There was a lot of, I mean, you really have to fight to get your product or your ideas out there in the modern world. Uh, I think like my memory of the last ones too, where you could go and kind of meet people and get a handle on who was there. But now there's so many people there that, you every day it's like a different crowd around you.
By the way, do we
So
know if they were there face-to-face dev cons? I assume there wasn't in 2020, maybe in 2021, or
good question.
because
That's a
yeah,
good
that cancels
question.
out 2 of those years for
Let me
sure.
look
Yeah,
up.
Yeah, I thought they did like a remote one, maybe. I can't remember though.
that sounds vaguely familiar, but we didn't even attend the remote
Yeah,
one. Yes. So, but like, yes.
strange times for
Past
sure.
events. See if I can find here the list.
But I will say, so I guess my impressions of DevCon, while you're looking that up, is that they've still managed to keep it very developer focused. It's less shilly than most, um, you know, crypto conferences that I've been to. It's very, so there's still a very builder focused kind of thing on. Now, given the number of side events, there are lots of chilly side events. And it's also interesting that other like very large layer one blockchains have kind of piggybacked. Um, like Sui was there, there was a Tron conference, there was an entire, L2Con kind of outside the thing. But one thing to give you a sense of how big the actual conference center was, um, when I'm in New York, I walk around a lot and I get, 12,000 steps a day. But just walking around the conference center and maybe going to the subway, I was getting like 15, 16,000. There was one day I got 25,000 steps in. So there was a lot of walking around. Um, I would say from the big themes of the conference was that one is, there was lots of talk about Ethereum winning the US election. So that was a kind of bold. Yeah,
I
that
mean, I'm
like
a big booster. The first episode of that, but that seems like a little overstated.
I mean, that was a common theme. Like, but people kind of said that quite a lot. Um, O2s are kind of everywhere. They're like the crucial part of the future of Ethereum. And there are tons of them now. And it's kind of hard to differentiate one from the other. There are now tools to kind of evaluate how, what features they offer, these kind of things. So, there are tons of them out there. Um, the app that has reached product market fit in generally the blockchain world, but the Ethereum world in general is our stable coins. And like you could see this, like I like to go outside the conference to just kind of get a flavor of the city. And I was amazed at how many places you could kind of get USDC or US Tether, you could use stuff. I went to a small bookstore like miles away from the conference, and they had a whole shelf section on Web3 in Thai. It was kind of amazing. Oh, I need to show this.
Do you want to do
You
your
know,
picture segment?
I'll jump into a little
Just
bit
one
more.
of them.
Well, I might as well jump into my picture segment because they tie into this. So, can you see my screen?
Untethered.
So this is really interesting. So, as I mentioned, that idea of like stable coins being the real driver of blockchain activity. This I found graph was really interesting. So the light blue is basically spot crypto trading volume. And then stablecoin is monthly. This line is stablecoin monthly sending addresses. So you can see, regardless of crypto kind of sentiment day to day, stable coins, there is some fluctuation, but they're tending to rise. And like there are gazillions of stable coins now. So like but that does seem to be where, a lot of the real need is. And you kind of miss this out in sort of North America and you know, the Western countries basically, but everywhere in Southeast Asia. I talked to a bunch of people from South America. They're all using stables for like even on a more day-to-day purpose, like of sending money, that blockchain idea of sending money and stuff like that. That's really done using stables. Um, this gives you a sense of like how developed this was a mall near our hotel. It's just extremely developed. Um, there is a ton of infrastructure being built, primarily by, it seems like China is investing in them through their Belt and Road Initiative. So they're building high-speed railways, all the ways that connect from China to Bangkok and beyond. And it's causing some interesting developments. So we were talking to some people, and they were saying like a lot of low-paid labor is coming in from Laos because they're cheaper than local Bangkok residents now. And so like that's how things are kind of getting built now. And then this is a billboard way away from the conference, but you can see like the BTS price in Thai baht and the ETH price in Thai baht is listed. They also listed kind of like you can, if you can read it, they said like since the DevCon upgrade, like there's like and since the Bitcoin halving. So it's very detailed. Like people really care about this stuff. People care about Web3 in a way that kind of amazed me. Like it's kind of integrated into their day-to-day lives in a way that was kind of surprising.
How was the food?
Excellent. Um, yeah, like
How does it
well,
compare
James,
to
James
like,
are vegetarian, so how is the food for you?
Uh, there's a lot of great vegetarian Thai food, but I think the average place doesn't have it. So I started to seek it out, but tons of vegetarian restaurants all around town and excellent food.
does how different is it from like westernized Thai food?
It's
I
pretty
mean
similar.
Thai food. What?
Pretty similar.
Pretty similar. So like Thai food is not like
Not like Chinese
Chinese
food.
food or what have you, where it's like
Chinese
the
food is
American
practically
version is just
like
its own thing, kind of.
Chinese
I
food is
don't know.
practically like a
I
different
found
cuisine per
I
country.
I found it tasted. I mean, it was definitely more spicy. My wife came with me and she eats very spicy food. And it was even very spicy for her. Like they mute a lot of the spices, I think,
It's
in
spicy, although I've had some places here in New York, Thai places that are as spicy. The one near our
yeah,
old office on Bedford, which doesn't exist anymore, that was super spicy.
yeah. And like, it's the emphasis is on different dishes. Like it's more on like the curry dishes than um, something like pad thai, like noodle dishes, that kind of stuff. But in general, I thought the food was amazing. But one thing that's really interesting is like, you know, it used to be all like open kind of markets, like street food, but now they have these giant malls, but they all have effectively stalls inside the malls. Like, so like they're like because they're air conditioned primarily, that's what I was told. So like there's this whole section in almost every mall where it's like um, like effectively like a little night market inside it. And some of the food is like really, really good, but it's like it's an odd kind of thing to go into a mall and have a bunch of stalls inside it.
By the way, have you guys ever had Laotian food?
Yes.
Yes. Jim, you must have, right? You're a foodie.
I'm
Or
thinking about it, and I don't think I have actually.
I'll tell you, there was a place in the gourmet ghetto in North Berkeley. Um, I forget what the big avenue was. Like,
Telegraph?
just no. Like,
Attic?
if campus is here, it
Yeah.
might have been off Shattuck, although I don't think Shattuck was like for a while I lived over on MLK and something, and it was like a couple blocks over from that something. There was like what street is Cheeseboard on?
Oh gosh. I think that's Shattuck, right?
Is that Shattuck? I guess they diverge a fair bit. Anyway, so let's assume it's Shattuck. So yeah, it was across from Cheeseboard, like a kind of second story
Oh, yeah, okay.
place. And it was actually quite, I mean, it's pretty close to Thai food, but different, spicy, different flavors. So I went there a couple times. And that's the only time I've seen a Laotian place. Victor,
There may
where
have been a
was
place in
your,
Oakland I went to, but that may have been Cambodian,
mm,
actually.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Where did I have it? I think I had it when I was in Asia, but not Laos. Like it was somewhere else. But I want to show this other picture of like, so this is one of the food stalls inside a mall that I ate at.
well,
And it was both funny because it's just like tiny food stall and they had like Michelin recommendations on it. And like, in these food courts, you'd see these places where um, they would have these like Michelin things. Jim, we had that tea dessert, that like frozen tea dessert, which
Pretty
was
good.
yeah. So lots of good food there. Um, yeah, that did not disappoint. It was funny because the open markets that we went to seemed more for tourists than locals anymore. Like,
Well, Bangkok's filled with tourists.
yeah, like um our tour guide, we took a day trip on the weekend, and the tour guide said, typically Bangkok has a population about well, Thailand in general has a population of like 70 million, and supposedly pre-COVID they had 40 million tourists a
wow.
year. And this year they're like lower, they're like 30 something million, but it's still a lot.
I mean, Bangkok's a big digital nomad destination too, right? Or is that not the case?
It
I had
it
the
used
impression.
to be. I haven't seen as much of them. We didn't see as much of them. It's hard to tell because everyone was mixed together. But yeah, and I think it's starting to get a little bit more expensive.
General English level, I thought was pretty good there, though. I always feel
Yeah.
guilty going to a place and demanding people speak English, but I'm completely incapable of speaking any Thai, so. But really wasn't a problem. Only a couple times we had to pull out our phone and type things into Google.
I have an important question.
Yes.
Shifting gears. What is an L2?
Oh gosh. Wait. Before that,
Do you have more
look,
Thailand? Oh, okay.
I was just going to show a picture of the um Give me a second here. Of the Thai dessert we just talked about.
Oh yeah, that thing was
You make me
delicious.
hungry. This is a, early
Oh,
dinner
this is really good.
recording.
Oh,
Give me a second. Give me a second.
wait, while Jim's looking for that, as a proud Canadian, I have to point to the Tim Hortons in
Canadian.
Thailand.
There's a Tim Hortons at the like the train station in Queens that you can take out to Long Island.
There are quite a few of them at these malls in Thailand. Oh yeah, this
Wow,
this thing.
that is a large dessert.
So it's sort of like, the shaved ice we had in Taiwan.
That stuff is awesome.
It's that, but it's infused with tea.
Mm.
And it
This is
and it has like sort of like the pearls from like I guess
Yeah.
bubbles from bubble tea in it. It is freaking delicious. It's probably my second favorite dessert in the world now.
It looks fantastic.
here.
Also a Michelin
Advertisement.
also a Michelin
Pancha.
place. Yeah.
And they had one at the airport too, by the way.
Oh, really?
We didn't know that, but when we were leaving, we saw it there.
Just let's take okay. What let's say, and I know these are different, but they're not that different questions. What was one thing that's clearly better about Bangkok than the US or Canada?
Well, okay, we were kind of talking about this. There are certain things that are kind of old and decrepit in the US, but they're nice in Asia. I think malls, fast food places, these are things that are usually pretty high level quality there, but here they've sort of fallen out of favor. I think there was a third one too, but I can't remember. What was
So
the third one?
my answer is this. Uh, KFC and 7-Eleven. So Asian 7-Elevens in general, like, Asian 7-Elevens in general are amazing. The ones in Japan, the ones in Taiwan, they have really good food. Thailand also has very nice 7-Elevens. Though I was really starving and walking by a KFC, and I had like this curry rice bowl, green curry rice bowl, KFC. It was freaking delicious. It was really good. I mean, much better than anything I've ever had in a North American KFC.
Do you think so? They're already importing Laotian labor in Thailand. 20 years, 30 years. Say it's a rich country like comparable to the US now, and the
Mhm.
US maybe doubles in that period of time, possibly, if we're lucky, Do you think you see the same mall culture decay? Or like is it that it's novel, or is there something structurally different?
When I was young, I remember the US had pretty high quality, like McDonald's and shopping malls. So I would imagine there's probably some trajectory and it'll go
Is it
down.
labor cost in the end that's the cause, or is it sustained attention, or?
I don't know, but like I will say that even like um malls that like I lived in Taiwan in the 90s, and when I go back there, like uh just in general, like 7-Elevens are still much nicer. Like they were nice back then and they're still much nicer, right?
Singapore is
Like
as rich as the US, kind of, and the malls are all very nice. Though I guess they're still newer, right?
I don't know,
yeah,
right around 1990, like the dollar menu started hitting everywhere here, and that just caused like a race to the bottom for food quality. Everybody just had to have lots of cheap food that you could shovel in your mouth, and whereas what I still see all throughout Asia is that if you step out of the fast food place and go next door, there's cheap, fresh, good food in like every restaurant, and so I don't think that you could even compete as a fast food place in Asia unless you had pretty good stuff.
Hmm.
yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so I would put still maybe that down to labor costs. Like, okay,
Maybe.
US airlines also suck. International airlines kind of better, and they're cheaper.
I want to say also that I think part of the reason that California has higher quality food is that there are a lot of Asians there and they expect good food.
Mhm.
I would also say that like um Hong Kong is a classic example of this. I mean, when we went there, you were like, is everything not a shopping mall? But the shopping malls are pretty high quality and nice generally. And I think it's because I think part of it is that um, there aren't a lot of places to go. Like homes generally are much smaller, and like you don't just hang out there, right? You want to get out of your home
Interesting.
and you want to
Yeah,
go to
okay.
places.
The
So I think that's part of what drives it.
right. So I
But
that's an interesting mental model. Like the
it's true of Manhattan too, and we don't have large, great shopping malls. Although one might argue that Manhattan itself is a shopping mall, but
that's interesting.
we don't. I don't know. There's sort of a playfulness in the Bangkok malls that I don't see elsewhere. Like one of the malls. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name. I can picture where it is, but every floor in the mall was a country in the world, like Epcot or something, and the escalators would all say like like have a little airplane on it. It would be like departure and arrival at each end of it. So you'd go to like one floor would be like all Japan or something. So
Hmm. That is interesting. All right. Can I ask my question again?
Sure,
yes.
sure.
So what is a layer two?
Oh gosh. I was saying that when I uh left for Bangkok, I felt like I knew what a layer two was, and by the time I came back, I did not know what a layer two was anymore. Because uh I think sort of like the traditional idea of layer two, what I had in mind always is like you have like this hierarchy of chains, and you have like the top dog chain, and you lock some token on that, and then you do your stuff on the second chain, and then when you're done you resolve it back there. But but seems like there were a couple problems with that model. Like one of them is that like there seems to be a whole discussion on like the security and promises amongst many layer twos, and not everybody agrees with which ones are acceptable and which ones aren't. But second of all is like to some extent, like maybe the way I see it now is that we have bridges and we have blockchains, and you can always kind of lock on any chain and move stuff to another chain and then move it back later on. And in any direction, there's not necessarily that hierarchy anymore. So I left there less certain of what it really meant to say that you're a layer two now, even though there are a lot of layer twos out there.
I feel like the hierarchy is meant to come in because you're sort of supposed to inherit the security of the base chain that has a lot of hash power or staking or whatever economic value tied up. Where
Yeah, that was sort of part of the problem. Is that some of the complaining is that the layer twos didn't inherit the
yeah,
security promises
but
of
maybe
the.
like people don't care that much. Like I think it's a while before you get an attack on the consensus mechanism. Like people sort of try to steal assets on chains.
Well, I think Vitalik is trying to kind of rope that in, and he's kind of said publicly that there are certain attributes of layer twos that are mostly around the security model that, in order for him to promote it, and call it a layer two, it has to have those attributes. But not clearly all layer twos don't have all those attributes now.
I think this is a good segue. I'm going to show something on screen here. A couple images in one, but discuss them. What's going on in this picture?
Jim, you want to jump in here or?
You take it.
So, there was an announcement at I think the opening ceremonies about sort of the future of Ethereum, and and there was this idea that we're gonna kind of jump to the end state on the Beam chain. So like instead of kind of incremental updates, they wanted to uh kind of do all of them at this one time, which seems kind of bonkers given how long it's taken even to do sort of the increment. Like they think that they've been doing incremental updates. And anyone who has been waiting for like proof of stake that took many years doesn't feel like it's incremental at all. But they put a roadmap in for like a 5-year roadmap to get to the next state, which seems you know, a lot. And probably would take, more like 10 years and you're going to get only a part of it. So,
The
you know,
optimism they've always had, though. I mean, I remember back in the early days that when the first launch was there, they had lots of stuff that didn't fit in, and they were like, "Okay, we're gonna have Ethereum 1 and Ethereum 2, and that's gonna be it. Ethereum 2 is gonna have everything."
yeah, but the term ossification accelerism is kind of like kind of describes what this is happening in this picture. So, yeah, I guess there is always this optimism. You would think it would get more practical as time went on, but it seems the opposite is happening.
Can you explain what's going on here?
Oh, okay. So, um, there was a lot of excitement during the opening ceremonies. Vitalik spoke, a lot of the developers spoke. They gave the roadmap, and even though we're questioning it, the response to it was really, really good, actually. Um, the closing ceremonies got sort of the opposite response. So the closing ceremonies, um, they started it by this like long panel discussion with a bunch of the people from the Ethereum Foundation. And it was very abstract and somewhat obtuse. Like it wasn't about any concrete deliverable in the Ethereum, but more of a general philosophical discussion. Um, it was who was, do you remember the host, Jim? They were
Uh,
from another, like the long,
I don't
I'm
remember their names, and maybe we shouldn't even use names on this portion of the
yeah,
conversation.
but anyways, it was not well received. And
Yeah, we walked outside with a group of people, and then other people started coming out, and there was sort of like confused and angry looks on people's faces. And I saw one person going on a rant.
yeah. I
Rant.
mean, I think people wanted like I think people were expecting something that kind of hyped people up like the opening ceremonies and they got the opposite. It was like I think people were more left kind of confused
I mean,
about
I too was sort of confused, and I tuned out a little bit. Partly, I mean, it was just because I'd been there for days, so I was going to probably tune out anyway. But it was in large part too because it was not as sensible, I guess, as other talks that I'd seen there. But I kind of just like it wasn't really bugging me. I just sort of walked out. But I was surprised to see how many people were angry there. I almost felt like there was something more to it than just the talk itself. Whatever anger I was seeing there, but I don't know what it was yet.
yeah.
I'll segue. Okay, the Ethereum Foundation. Net good, doing a good job, doing an excellent job. Is Ethereum successful in spite of the foundation? What's
See,
your
I'm not necessarily the person to ask because I walked out of there confused by the anger I was seeing from other people, and I was wondering if there wasn't something else going on that was making people angry at the foundation. But I personally didn't feel any animosity towards them. I just sort of took that one talk as a little off, but
picture?
I mean, it's a little I mean, clearly Ethereum has a dominant place in the entire like Web3 ecosystem. Like, most of the new, almost all the new apps start there. Like, there's this, and so from that point of view, objectively, they must be doing something right. Whether that's happening in spite of them, that I don't know. But I am like, I am kind of confused in like, um, it's not clear to me how it functions really. Like, I think there is uh Vitalik seems to be very transparent. There are a lot of projects that are trying to be more transparent, having like DAO-like structures. Um, you know, that kind of thing. And the Ethereum Foundation in some ways seems like a relic of the past. Like it's this sort of umbrella foundation that's probably not quite as clearly transparent as some of the things that are built on top of Ethereum.
I mean, we years ago, when we were more tied in with it, actually, Kieran, you knew them more than we did, and they had we had our opinions, and they had their pluses and minuses back then. Coming back to DevCon after this long gap right now, sort of understanding the answer to that question is part of what we're trying to figure out. So I don't know, like let me turn it around and put you in the hot seat. What back before in 2017, when we were hanging out with them, or even earlier in 2014 when you were hanging out with them, how would you have answered that question then?
Well, okay, so the foundation I knew for a short window, and I think it turned over pretty significantly while I was there. So like I got to meet all of the Ethereum founders, of which there were a unusually large number in Zug, summer 2014. Um, and it felt we kind of discussed this on the some of the early days of Ethereum series. It did have a feel of like the inmates running the asylum sort of thing. Um, but I, I think some of the kind of anti-professionalism that you saw was a good thing. That like it's kind of like open sourcey, a little bit loosey goosey, and then there was merit based on like code that got shipped. The plans were too big and fantastical, but the big vision maybe got people excited. But I think they had a period where they were like cash constrained, and that made them practical for long enough to get the thing up and running. And kind of since then, there still is a lot of work going on, but there hasn't been a force to bring it back to earth. By the way, this seemed to sort of happen with Bitcoin as well. I haven't heard anything from the Bitcoin core devs in some time. Like, I think Blockstream is supposedly still around, but like, and yeah, you hear stuff, ordinals, runes, like they're building a little bit, but it's like way worse on Bitcoin, it seems. So I want to give credit where it's due here. But yeah,
Yeah,
my sense is that um, they had a genius, have a genius. They had some amount of execution. They had some good backers early on, and it was enough to hold the ship together. And um, it's kind of it's an incumbent now. And it feels like that pressure is not really there to be scrappy and in market. Like if you look at the Solana folks, they seem hungry still, and it's a pretty successful project. Um, so that said, it's like still better than Bitcoin. And it's interesting to me that hasn't flipped Bitcoin.
yeah,
But again, we are talking fees are too high. There's not really like a serious attempt to address this, it feels like it's just been like this for a long time. And yeah, like fees are going up on Solana. Fees will maybe go up on the L2s as they get clogged. But like punting to the L2s doesn't feel like a long-term solution. Like I think um it feels a little like Manhattan or California, where like there was a something really good that kept bringing people in until the prices started to rise. And still all the really good people are there, kind of, but people keep leaving. And that one day it might flip around. And they're still great, but could just definitely try harder at appealing to the newcomer, I guess. So yeah, as to the foundation itself, I just like does it make any announcements? Does it like you never hear from it? Like what does it do? I felt that the Ethereum also kind of had a little bit of, and I don't think this was because this was on purpose. It felt like it's had like a two-tier system for a while, where like there are people that would be engaged seriously and like in the conversation. Like, I think when we were building our client, we collaborated with the Ethereum people, but there was not necessarily like a serious attempt to include us in the group if you didn't sort of like push for it. And the way to push for it is just like ask Vitalik and then he would do it, kind of, unless there was like a big backlash from some other members of the. So the, and I kind of feel like that sort of continued and then ended up alienating both some of the founders of Ethereum and like the other clients and et cetera. And again, I don't think it was really purposeful at all, but it was a weird sort of like get close to the kid and then he was like 19 at the time and then like elbow other people out dynamic that a little bit has persisted. It's appeared in different forms, but there was some criticism of like one of the core researchers dropping this giant new 5-year roadmap that no one had ever discussed, and it was like related to what this is. So I wasn't there firsthand for this part, but I was just from talking to you and friends of ours. It was related to things that were going on, but not, and it's, yeah, you could say a marketplace of ideas. People should each all suggest like where Ethereum is going, but it was like supposedly presented as the direction. It's like, like where did that come from? So yeah, I think the governance is okay, but probably could be way better.
Well, I guess I don't know. Like what I'm saying is that I think there is a sort of commitment to decentralization, which I admire, and there's a ton of energy there, but it's a little bit all over the place because it's decentralized. And I think that's those two things kind of go hand in hand to some extent. You know what I mean?
Would it have been as successful if it wasn't so decentralized?
I don't think it would have been. Like, yeah, like I think it would have um and I think that that ideological desire to be decentralized still is very strong in that. And it's much stronger there than other projects, I would say.
Do you see it as more decentralized than Bitcoin?
Yeah, just because just because you can do more on it, right?
By the way,
So
I,
there's
I agree with that. I think part of the reason there were so many versions of Ethereum was that people were worried about the client lock-in in Bitcoin, that it became an oligarchy of the 6 core devs and the C++ Bitcoin D client. And they went sort of like way the other way, and it was interesting. Kind of worked.
yeah, I mean like even like kind of like we went to several talks where it was like, you know, like this is where the now two is, and you are not an L2 over there. And then the other L2 groups would be like, no, we are an L2 and you are not an L2, and this is why. And it was similar with DAOs. Like people were kind of having this back and forth. So those conversations were very, very active.
Yeah.
And they're still very impassioned.
But look at this list here. I would say Bitcoin, very decentralized. Ethereum, perhaps more still. Tether, not at all decentralized. Solana, moderately decentralized. BNB, kind of decentralized. XRP, perhaps even less than BNB. So it seems like the markets, they value it to a point, you know.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is that I think the decentralization approach allows it to gather all the people who care about it. That's why there are so many L2s. That's why there are so many applications. Whereas the other ones are less decentralized. Like I talked to developers who had decided to develop on Solana, for example, and they said, yeah, it's because Solana was able to give them a lot of support, dev grants and speaking slots at their conferences and these kind of things, right? So it's more coordinated in that way. But if you kind of care about decentralization, it's less. Like, and a lot of people seem to still care about.
All right. Bottom line it. More or less bullish on ETH after DevCon? Did you buy? Did you sell? Did you hold?
more, but it's also hard to disambiguate what I learned at DevCon from, like political situations changing in the last month too. So
Well, the
uh,
price is up, yeah, but you know, perhaps due to the political
uh,
situation.
I was just unaware at how big these conferences had become, and that's what made me feel more. There were a
But
Yeah,
lot of people there
I
that are dedicated to making this work.
I would say I'm more excited about what's going on there than kind of before the conference. Just because the range of things that people are trying is just so huge. There's still tons of innovation happening in that ecosystem.
I mean, I mean, amongst other things, what made me excited in 2014, 2015 was the community that was forming around the idea. The idea was great, uh, but a great idea isn't going to do much. It was seeing how many people were into it at the time, and having not gone to DevCon in a while, I guess I was just unaware of how much that community has grown. In my mind, it wasn't even sure if it had slipped a little bit, but no, it's huge right now.
Yeah,
Vitalik's like a rock star now.
yeah, I
um,
would agree with all that. And
Right.
like I said, is that there are active debates in the community, and people one of the interesting things about Ethereum is people can debate and build. Whereas, a lot of the times, like it seems in Bitcoin, you have those debates and no one can do anything except, do a whole nother fork of Bitcoin if the debates go those ways. But that seems to be the opposite of what's happening in Ethereum.
we get the layer twos though. That's kind of, I mean, it's almost a fork, and there's a lot of them. But I guess it accrues some value back within
Yeah,
Ethereum.
and they like even though technically I think Jim's right, is that the definition is very vague. They at least feel like at least market that they are tied to the security model of, the core public Ethereum blockchain. Um, how accurate that is varies to a lot of degrees, but they feel that there's some
Yeah.
being under that tent is an important part of their
I mean, to put it differently, like to some extent, I left feeling that L2 was a marketing term more than a technical term, but it's a really good sign that everybody wants to market next to Ethereum.
yeah.
Let me ask you a morbid question. If Vitalik were to walk away or something were to happen to Vitalik, what do you think that would do to the long-term viability of Ethereum?
I I think it's at the point where he could walk away if he wanted to.
I mean, yeah,
That
so
would be my
Bitcoin's definitely way past surviving Satoshi, right? You know,
yeah, exactly. So
there's so
I
much roadmap, but maybe like the roadmap isn't really needed at this point. It's open source, it's all that. But
That's the point of the decentralization is that it's going to outlive the creator, and I think they've made sure that that's going to happen. Um,
what I think it'll live, but I'm saying like the prospects. Like if you 10 years from now, Vitalik working on it versus not, like what's the difference in the market caps?
I think I think it would go on without him because, well, yeah.
So no difference in market cap?
well, I think you know
I'll give you
he's a
my
rallying force behind um a, like I don't know how much he does behind the scenes. Like he may do a ton, but I think as a figurehead, he's an important one. But I think there are lots of people who could probably maybe not as effectively as Vitalik, but I think there are other people in the community that could step into roles like that.
you didn't give me a number. How do the market caps compare?
I think if he wasn't there for 10 years, there'd be a shortish term hit. but I think over time it would probably even out.
Jim, yeah, that's sort of what you said, but I'll ask you to be concrete.
I think at this point, I think Vitalik has done a good job of distributing direction in the chain and excitement around the chain, and it will be similar with or without him. It's sort of a morbid speculation, so it makes it a little hard to talk it through. But I do think that there's a lot of energy around it, and uh, it would keep going similarly with or without him at this point in time. It's good to have him around.
Now, maybe it's because I didn't go to DevCon, but I think it would lose half.
Huh.
Like a lot of the excitement is to like that you see at DevCon is to go see Vitalik, you know? Like I don't think it would go away, but also it's sort of like the gigantic roadmap sort of says that it's like still his baby kind of thing. And there's no like succession plan. There's, not that there needs to be a succession plan, but yeah, I think we'll see if these things are more about like technical merit than sentiment. Like ETH made itself
Well,
about technical merit and evolution, whereas
we've come
Bitcoin,
full circle to some extent here because now you're talking
exactly.
about a popularity
Is
contest.
it just a meme or is like there is a master plan
Are,
behind these
are you
loops?
comparing Vitalik to the Doge dog now?
Yes. Vitalik is the Doge. All right. Well, maybe we'll do a quick segment to pull us out of this. Good episode so far. So this is sort of like an overrated or an underrated or underrated 90s and early aughts hip hop. Vic, I we've communicated before. I believe you were a sort of general music journalist, or can you explain what you worked on for a period of time? You're obviously fairly knowledgeable in this area.
So, hip hop, I got into it really, really early. But in Toronto, it was hard. Like literally the only there was only one radio show called the Fantastic Voyage Show that happened once a week out of this um by this guy Ron Nelson, and it was like a couple hours. We just pass around mixtapes of it. But and there was like one record store that carried hip hop albums, but I kind of got obsessed with it um, kind of from in middle school doing some breaking and then kind of evolving into my interest in hip hop. But then eventually when I moved to Taiwan, I started to become an entertainment journalist and wrote music reviews and eventually wrote for Billboard magazine.
I didn't even know it was for Billboard. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, I was their Asian correspondent, so I'd cover, yeah, so
Who is the most famous person you met?
ooh, that's a good question. Let me see. Met quite a few famous people because we were an English language newspaper. So when foreign people came, um, they would like bring us to interview them so they could have an article in English. Um, Let me
You've
think.
mentioned some names before, so I know you've
Yeah,
met.
Mel Gibson, Steven Seagal.
I don't
Let's
know if you
see.
want to say it, but I know somebody irritated you.
Oh, Phil Collins. Yeah. Um, REM, a bunch of artists that kind of came through. Taiwan was sort of a stop in the sort of Asian tour back then. So, um, yeah, it was an exciting time.
LL Cool J, overrated, underrated.
Well, it's hard for me to say this because like I think uh, you know, Mama Said Knock You Out is like one of the greatest rap albums of all time. But I feel like he's been underrated now. Like he recently released an album called The Force that was produced by Q-Tip of Tribe Called Quest. And I think it has not gotten the attention. And it might just be because I'm nostalgic about him, but I think nowadays he's underrated.
I feel like so I really I like LL Cool J, and I think maybe he started sort of like appearing in movies and such, and I think this kind of like reduced his image as he's a good rapper, you know?
Yeah.
And like to some degree, all rappers act, but it's sort of like maybe it hurts your cred if you start appearing in movies. I think that has something to do with his like I feel like people don't know he's like a lot of good tracks. So I would
Yeah.
agree and say underrated.
I feel this way about Ice Cube too. Like he went from like,
Ice Cube was hard, yeah.
NWA
And
to
then
like this
people don't
like
think
big
about it.
teddy bear guy in
Yeah.
like sitcoms, right? So like, yeah, but yeah, I feel he's underrated now. Though
Yeah.
back in the day, he
He
was
was
definitely at the
yeah.
peak.
Okay. Do you prefer Nas or Jay-Z?
This is a tough one, but I think in terms of listening, I prefer Jay-Z.
It's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So before asking you that question, I had to think about it for just a second myself. Through my childhood, be like Nas all the way. Jay-Z's,
Right.
you know, I think he's a sellout, but he's got like a venture fund called like Marcy Ventures now. It's like kind of
I
like a
mean,
couple
he's married
hundred
to
million.
Beyonce, right? Like it's like he is royalty at this point,
I
right? Like,
believe Jay-Z is a billionaire or
yeah.
close. I'm pretty sure Nas is not. Which kind of you just kind of gotta then say that Nas is a better rapper. I would say, okay, technical proficiency, it's not really close. Nas is a
Yeah.
much better rapper. Jay-Z's albums are a little bit better produced, although I think like singularly Illmatic was better than anything Jay-Z did. Nas was
Yeah.
not really able to repeat that. Like it was like a moment in time. I was making this joke earlier, like when Vitalik sent the PDF of the white paper out and it just made its way through the hood. This was the model that Nas. I think he made no money on Illmatic. It's just like the tapes kept getting copied.
Yeah.
Everyone was listening to it. Like so Nas more cred, more rappability. But I agree, Jay-Z's albums, if you look on balance, more
Yeah,
listen.
like well, and the thing is that I this is my struggle with it. I think, like you said, technical proficiency, writing, all of these things, Nas is better. But like when it comes down to actually like listening to stuff, like I, there's just something about Jay-Z songs that are catchy. Like supposedly he never writes anything down before going into a recording session, and he just kind of sort of freestyles his way through it, which kind of, but yeah, that flow, it's just super catchy, you know?
I I maybe this was like in my college years, I had some like New York native friends were like a common debate is like, do we listen to Reasonable Doubt or do we listen to Illmatic first? And usually like
Right.
there's someone be smoking joints and it's like, but it was like which order do you do it in?
Yes.
Those were the options on the menu.
My version of this was Tupac versus Biggie, right? Like
Yeah.
you could only choose one. Like even though they both had amazing songs, like you just had to choose one, right?
Bay Area rap, overrated, underrated.
Now, I know I could not name a single Bay Area rap when this question came up, though the one that came up when I did a Google search for it was MC Hammer.
By the way,
So
this I did not know.
like he's from Oakland. Um, so from that point of view, I would say overrated, I guess. Like
Well, okay, let me give you my take. Having lived in the Bay for a little while, I knew a handful of Bay Area artists and songs before. Like a couple went viral in like the early aughts.
Mhm.
But there's a thing called the hyphy movement. Well, I think this is mostly popularized by Mac Dre, who did die young, unfortunately. But basically, I think the Bay Area had sort of like an indie rap culture where they made a lot of albums. Like Too Short probably is the most famous Bay Area rapper. Blow the Whistles song a
Yeah,
lot of people know.
great song.
He's made like 16, 18 albums. They're just in the studio all the time, and I think they kind of self-produced them, and so they probably made less gross, but maybe the same net kind of thing. And yeah, it's a distinct sound. E40 got pretty big. He had a couple songs you'd recognize from him. And it's a thing. It's like
Yeah.
it didn't escape, but I think it was like a failure of mass marketing. Like all the studios are in LA and maybe a little bit in New York. And so like the Bay, I guess if you're a really good Bay Area rapper, maybe you would go down to LA or something. I don't know. There's some argument that Tupac did that a little bit. Um, so yeah, I think it's like, though it is odd, like Southern rap became known for a sound and it did get big, and people would identify it nationally as a distinct thing. I also think like it's not that much Chicago rap. There's some, but yeah, so I say underrated, but so I guess I lived in the market for long enough to become familiar with and appreciate it.
I will
Maybe
say,
it just
for the
wasn't national
record,
quality, but maybe it was just marketed poorly.
yeah, Too Short is my favorite rap name of all time, and I am jealous. That would be the rap name I would take for myself if I could, if he didn't exist.
Favorite conscious rapper or rap group?
Oh, uh, this is a tough one. I was thinking about this for a while, and probably it would. I guess it's defined how you think of conscious, but I kind of have to go back to the first one, which is Grandmaster Flash, because he did, the message, um, white lines.
Lines, yeah.
What though I'm pretty sure most people thought White Lines was a pro cocaine song because
Don't do it as part of the
it's
refrain.
just too much of a banger. Like
Yeah,
it's like, but like yeah, like I think that would probably be my favorite just because, every line of those songs are kind of instilled in my brain.
yeah. I maybe they're on the edge, but I would have said a tribe called Quest, or I do say.
Yes.
Tribe.
All of the native tongues, like De La Soul is probably in there too. Tribe Called Quest, like those are
Diggable Planets is good. It's a good
yes,
track.
yes.
But some of the conscious rap is kind of like very revolutionary, but not in a like gangster way. And some of it is just kind of like more chill, more positive. And it's like
Yeah.
you should probably bifurcate those groups, but yeah, I don't know. Um, whatever happened to
Well, okay.
sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
In that frame, I need to do a shout out to Arrested Development because even though they had that one album that was really good, it was really good. Like, it was very, very good.
Whatever happened to Gangstar?
So I know a little bit about this. Like Guru from Gangstar went on to create a series of rap albums called Jazzmatazz with jazz artists. And I think those are some of the best rap. Number one of that is probably one of the best rap albums of all time. So, you know, like he played with like live musicians on it, and it's
Cool.
just like basically creating, that kind of um mixed jazz hip hop kind of style that kind of still persists to this day.
Did Why so this didn't break through the mainstream? Undermarketed or niche tastes, you know?
It's a good question. Like, I don't know, like it seems to be this sort of thing that kind of appears like jazz flavored hip hop kind of appears all the time. So it's like I kind of think of it as like ska music. Like ska kind of comes back every decade at some point. And like jazz infused hip hop seems to also kind of like everyone kind of brings it back. It never goes away, but it never kind of comes back. It never like gets super huge too.
Big Pun, Fat Joe.
Big pun, man. Pour one out for big pun. That's a lot.
I had to look this up. I was like, wait, which one died?
Yeah.
30 years old. I forgot that it was a heart attack.
Well, I didn't know that it was a heart attack. I
I
assumed,
so I think uh taking back to like, global
yeah.
macro, part of me emotionally says he doesn't die in 2025, 2024. Like, when's the last time? Obviously, heart disease, big cause of death, still kind of the biggest, but it's
Yeah.
growing older. Like, I think, in some ways, like you can't tell if the world is getting better. But emotionally, when I hear that, I think he doesn't die today.
I don't know, man. He probably wouldn't have made it through COVID if he had a heart
He
condition.
might not have made it through COVID. I agree.
But he might have lasted longer. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Rest in peace to Big.
Yeah.
Fat
Well,
Joe is the one that
I
lived.
gotta buy some old liquor and pour one out
Yeah.
for him. Yeah, like
Rappers that die young now, it's always murders lately.
yeah, exactly. Like it's always murders. Like
Hasn't been health issues in a minute. Although I feel like the rest of the country has gotten fatter. Rappers seem to have gotten skinnier.
yeah, I mean rappers, I mean, I don't know, like maybe 50 Cent was the first like truly buff rapper. Like they seem to be, well, no, that's
The
not true. LL Cool J was
LL Cool J was
LL
jacked.
was in good shape.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Right.
Maybe he led the way in that.
Yeah. I don't know. I still think he would have lived somehow. But your point is well taken. COVID might have taken him. But anyways, all right. Good long episode. Any final notes from either of you?
Hmm. Jim, what do you think?
Final notes. I think you should fade us out to some LL Cool J though.
I should have had that queued. Let me
You
hold
should
on.
have had that queued up. Yes, I don't have any queued up, but yes, maybe you can fill it in on the track afterwards. Put in some Jazzmatazz by Guru because you can put that in there.
This is the problem with these music videos. Remember when they had like minute long intros?
Intros,
I had to
yes.
like scroll. Like,
I remember albums had like interludes, like lots of like spoken
it,
interludes in them.
interludes were great. All right. Well, thank you guys. I'll
Peace
upload
out.
shortly. LL Cool J,
Later.
underrated.